Hi there, and welcome to our webinar on Guide Plus. And today I am super excited to introduce to you Mr. Leon Hady, a former head teacher of an outstanding school. Would you like to introduce yourself, Hady?
Thank you very much for having me on our live stream, Nathan. I'm glad I get to be the first guest. I feel that's how it should be. A very big hello to everyone who's tuning in for this. Thanks a lot for agreeing to do them, Nathan. Nathan's joined us to actually take on responsibility for this. It's wonderful to be here, and I look forward to sharing some ideas on what Guide Plus is and kind of setting out with Nathan what to expect in the next couple of weeks and months.
Perfect. So today, our topic today for this webinar is parenting and relationships that you may build and foster with your children. And Leon Hady's actually created a parenting course, and we'll dive into that in a bit more detail later on into the webinar. Leon Hady's also a parent. I'm a new parent, so I'm looking forward to picking his brains to get a few tips, because your eldest is 9, Leon?
11.
So there we go. 11 years of experience on me. So I can't wait to pick his brains. And if you are just logging in right now, I'll reintroduce myself. My name's Nathan Ramsey, and I'm joined here today with Leon Hady, and we're going to talk about parenting. And we are offering you this free service, completely free, on the Guide Plus platform. So my first question for you, Leon, is because I've been really interested in the parenting course that you've made. Obviously, I've watched the videos, they're really useful. My child's less than 1 year old, so I can't really implement a lot of what's being taught in these videos. But my first question for you is, as a teacher and a person that's had the ambition of solving teacher and school problems and easing the lives of teachers and educators, what made you to change your focus from teaching, schools, learning, and to parents and parenting?
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's a good question. It doesn't make an obvious link. I think for us, the most important thing that we always found with a lot of the Guide products, because we had a tuition center, we trained teachers. Obviously, we was lucky enough to be head teacher of a school. And what I was always trying to do was draw a line between them, because sometimes you find with a lot of things, they're siloed. So the parents didn't really know what teaching and learning was. The school wouldn't really know what was going on at home. The child wouldn't really know what the purpose of school was and why their child was putting pressure on them. So there's a real disconnect. And unfortunately, with a lot of situations, when I was head of a school, we used to work with students who, sadly, they'd been given up on a lot by other factors and members of society. And so you'd have a parent really disappointed with the school, disappointed with this, and then you get into a conversation with them. At some point, they'd end up saying, well, what can I expect? That's what I was like at school, or, I was never any good at school. And so you realize, wait, hold on, you don't realize that you could learn to change, and you don't realize that the point of school isn't for you to be good or bad at school. It's for you to find a way to work with the school and to understand the teaching and learning process. And so we just realized that I wouldn't even say that teaching and learning is done very well in all schools. It's a skill.
Yeah.
But then it's definitely not being done with the pupil, who's the most important person in this. And then the biggest supporter is the parent. So the person who'd want to champion it most is the parent or carer, and the person who'd be in the institution that would be able to give the best advice was the school. So what we try to do with, as you know, with a lot of Guide products, with a Guide teacher training, with Guide tuition, we'd be bridging some of those gaps. Now, I'm a big fan of schools. I would never be like, school, you should homeschool, and homeschooling's better. In some instances, that's true. But generally, especially in the UK, we're lucky with the schools we have. Mm-hmm. But I just felt that if we start to make these courses and information for parents, they can bridge the gap better. And also, Nathan, just to be honest with you, it was reactive. So because we do videos and we do YouTube channels, and we've got millions of views on YouTube, we kind of know video learning, right? So when the first pandemic hit, we did straight away, within 3 or 4 days, we had a streaming school up and running, right? Live lessons, about 5,000 kids a day turned up, and they'd be doing English, math, science, history, all these micro classes, which was great, because schools weren't there. Schools were like, they were treating the pandemic at the beginning of the first lockdown like expulsion, or being suspended. Do you know what I mean? And when you get like, here's a pack of work for you, it's like, wait, what? We need to teach the kids. So we were a bit ahead of the game. Then with the second one, a lot of schools then, they've been watching our webinars, learning a bit from us as well. And, we've been helping our customers. They were then starting to do live lessons. So we were like, okay, well, schools kind of know what they're doing. We're doing the webinars with them. The students had the streaming school. Now schools are supporting them, and Oak National Academy grew and was born, etc. So what should we do? And then we were there just thinking, okay, the BBC did a massive push on that. We're like, well, who's helping the parents? So then we were like, we're going to make a parenting course to help you understand how to not necessarily become a better parent, but how to kind of understand how you can apply learning, principles of learning at home. And obviously trying to couch it in language, Nathan, that wouldn't be like, obviously when you did your masters or when I was doing any of my study, we're not trying to put it in a situation where we're like, and this is theory 7.211.
Okay.
We're just kind of like, look, this is how you do it. You don't really need to know where it comes from. You need to know what works. And that was really heartwarming, you know, and that's what led us to turn it into a product. We did it and we were like, we're good. Pat ourselves on the back, see you later. Yeah. Thousands of parents who used it. We were very happy. But it's only when we saw the feedback, Nathan, from what parents said, and that would, I'm not saying it would bring a tear to your eye, but it was probably some of the most important feedback on anything I'd ever gotten in my life. Like, you know, people putting stuff to you like life-changing. I mean, like if you've got time later on, I'd love to share some.
Yeah, definitely. We can definitely go through some of the feedback and share some of the feedback. Very, very powerful, especially if you're impacting families in the home and supporting families in the home. And, you know, it's amazing to be honest.
Who's going to do it, Nick? If you imagine, I don't know your background, but, you know, I had a single mum, right? Mum, one worked 2 jobs, get us to school. She's like, get to school. And then she'd be worried, and, you know, you never want to put pressure financially to get a tutor. So you're studying and you're getting your GCSEs, but you don't really know. You know, I was probably 20 till I realized the value of my education. Now, obviously, I've got several masters since, and I really, really value my education now. But back at the start, like, I know my mum had the dedication and willingness. If someone would have given her a bit of advice, she'd have applied it. Do you know what I mean? But where was she going to get it? You know, where was she going to go spend days in the library? Was she going to this? Was she not? And now, because we can make video courses, and essentially we make what we make with Guide Plus is a Netflix of educating, not education, educating. And that's where we've really started to show a difference. As a very lengthy response to your question, Nathan.
No, it's interesting. What I like what resonated with me most out of your response is the fact, you know, how was your mum going to access that information? Is she going to go to the library? Is she going to spend several hours a week reading books after books on parenting? What is she going to do? And that's the great thing about the course, right? It's just, you know, small digestible videos that you can consume in a few minutes and get, you know, plenty of teaching tips from, or parenting tips or relationship tips. I do have another question for you, Leon. So, you know, this course, it's 30 or so videos on this course. Out of all of the videos and all of the pointers and tips that are in the course, what video did you find useful and insightful, and did you find was an effective video for you in the home?
To change this question ever so slightly, like which of our video bags you saw, is I'd never taught my son. Right. And when I say taught, I mean, you know, like, hey, this is a period of time. Obviously, I teach him to ride bikes, I teach him football, but I never taught him in a way as like, hey, let's learn something together and we start from zero, because of how young he was. So during the lockdown, he was 4. And obviously my whole background was secondary and college. So here I am working with a 4-year-old. I'm like, yo, if you can't read, I'm pretty much out the game, right? Because everything with me starts as an English teacher is like, well, what can you read? What shall we read? You know, even if, so I'm just like, okay, we've got no words. Where do we start? So I actually went into some of the videos we have in the bank, which is, again, you know, from where parenting started, and then moving into how you work with children at primary, how you work with children at secondary. And I started to watch those videos. And so much of it was all just about kind of being in a situation of not trying to push the child, but trying to be alongside the child, which I'd never really done, Nathan, to be honest with you. I'd always be like, you know, obviously I think I've told you before that my eldest, she's done her English and maths equivalents. She's doing her media and music equivalents. Yeah. She's doing them young, not because she's particularly bright, just because I can train her for them. You know, it's great. But with the youngest one, and so I'm always like, here's the marker, let's get here, go, go, go. That's how I kind of did it. But then with the boy, the little one, I was just like, I just got to be alongside you. And so, and that was really interesting for me, Nathan, because I'd never kind of tried to see the world through his eyes, right? And obviously, I know your child's really, really young now, but in a few years, that's if I was to parent all over again, I would spend a lot more time not being like, hey, you're writing on the wall, don't write on the wall. I'd be like, what is the wall to you? They'll be like, oh, Dad, it's a huge color thing that I can just kind of be creative on. And you're like, okay, I get it now. Do you know what I mean? Or you know, that cliche is like, well, they don't like the present, they love playing with the box. And you just kind of like, well, actually, like getting them bits, like just bits of wood, bits of linen, boxes to play with. And of course, I sent one of my daughters to a Steiner school for a while where they don't allow toys, right? And so I'd come back and she was just the most creative thing in the world because she was bringing this up. And that's another reason why on the course, Nathan, we brought in Steiner education. We brought in Montessori videos. So parents don't just have to know how something's going like this and like, oh, this is exactly how you follow national curriculum, which is of use. But you're open to IB, you're open to Montessori, you're open to Steiner. And that's also what, you know, in versions of this, where you'll be bringing in experts to discuss and talk about it as well. It's it's key. So that the video for me was literally just one like, how'd you work with someone at this age? I had no idea.
The younger years.
I'd never thought about it. And until Boris Johnson went, and you're all going to be staying at home, I was like, oh my God, now I've got to teach. Because with the eldest two, 8 and 11, or they were, you know, 10 and 9 at the time, or 10 and 7 at the time, easy, you know, once you read, a parent's responsibility number 1 is obviously keep your child safe and keep them clothed. But no, responsibility number 3 is teach them to read, right? If you get to a point where your child isn't reading, you're not irresponsible or anything, you're just not giving them this key, right? It's this massive key to life to read and to teach them to read widely. And as a parent, that's like, even, and my wife, I got to admit, she's really hot on this as well. It's just like every day, you know, we sit in a room and we read every day. We got to do 20 minutes family reading, or the kids have got to do half an hour of their own reading. There's no option. That's more than even having dinner, Nate. We can miss dinner. Yeah. We can miss bedtime. We don't miss reading.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. So would you say hindsight then from the pandemic, would you say, you know, facilitating this exploration style of learning and development for the younger years, is that something that's benefited your son?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. Like a friend put it to me best, and I echo and copy what he said a lot of the time. Before the pandemic, I had children. After the pandemic, I knew my children. And I think with that, I, you know, you kind of have that, you know, maybe kind of classic, like, you know, I'm the dad, we're all going to do this today, this is what we're going to do, this, that, and the other. And that actually, like with especially, like, my wife was really big on special time. So every day, the kids get 10-15 minutes alone with her, and then every half term or holiday, everyone gets a whole day with mum alone, so they get their own time. So they get kind of listened to in that way. In reference to how it changed for me is like, I'm like, I have to be in Gabriel mode now, I have to be in Layla mode now, I have to be in Amira mode now. And I just kind of realized that it's not like, it's like, you know how sometimes you'll change the tone, the way you'll speak to one.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
It's much deeper than that. It's much deeper. It's like, hey, Gabriel, I'm coming into your world for a bit, and everything is as important as you make it. Do you know what I mean? Because even when you're talking to someone and you're changing your tone, you're like placating it or respecting it or whatever. But with Gabriel, he'd just be like, and he's got a thing about, for example, collecting stones. And pre-pandemic, I'd be like, Gabriel, leave it. And then during the pandemic, it's just like, yeah, Dad, I want to go find some stones. And so I'm just like, yo, that stone looks exactly the same as that stone. Why are we picking up the same stone, bro? And he's just like, no, this stone's more special. And so you got to get there where you're like, I'm in his world. This is a special stone. We got to live there. And you know what I mean? And then he wants to do like burying the stone. And you're just like, this is an hour. And I never would have done it before. And you might probably look at that and say, well, you should have been doing that anyway. And that's what you expect from parenting. But it wasn't until I kind of watched our videos, went back into it, was like, no, I've got to inhabit his world. It really made a big difference for me. It really did. And, you know, I've been advising people with their kids for 15 years, right? In every single walk of life. But I'd never thought about it with a 4-year-old. Do you know what I mean? Because people normally ask me, they won't study, or the phones, or the social media, or they won't this. And they're not, it's normally when they've got to a bad situation, they ask for my advice. But here I was trying to make a best start of something. And I was like, well, what do I do? And thankfully, the videos, our own videos helped me. And I'm really glad to say they helped a lot of parents as well.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. And I'm a big fan of the Steiner learning approach, Montessori as well. I'm a big believer of, you know, young people learning through exploration and experiments. So I'm all for that, to be honest. And I'm glad that your son has been able to have that experience with you in the Stones.
A great school in Nottingham, close. I hope that's not too much of a geographical difference for you. You had a base before, Nathan, but you've got a great school in Nottingham, and there's
it's really interesting. How do you find screen time with the children then? So it's really interesting, and it's really nice to know that you fostered this reading culture in your family. How do you go about screen time with the youngsters?
Yeah, there is no screen time. And on the weekends, you have 2-hour blocks, a 2-hour break, a 2-hour block, and then a family movie. So they might watch 6 hours a day on the weekend. 2-hour block that they have control over, but in the week, none. And we, you call it traditional. We talk at the dinner table. We have board games. We have reading time. They might have lessons on Zoom. They have lessons on Zoom, but that is it. We do not allow.
So what would you say to parents that may not have as much free time? So, some of the things that you're talking about, they sound fantastic, but in the ideal world, maybe people don't have that much time to sit down at the table, take up 30 minutes for reading, 45 minutes to go and find and hide stones. What about, people that are just got no time?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we appeal to a lot is the lowest common denominator, right? So we're just kind of like, well, the person's got no time. Let's assume everyone doesn't have time. Having time is one thing. Making time is another thing. Right. So let me just kind of be clear on that. I'm not a person that, as you know me, I won't acquiesce like, oh, it's okay. It's not okay. Some things aren't okay. If you come home and you are tired and this, that, and the other, you still have to make time for this thing that you created and put in the world. And look, I'm very, very hard working. I was born in a shared house, as so some people who are watching this might know. But my ultimate thing is there is the opportunity to make time. In the second one is like, if you can't facilitate it, who can? And that's one of the things as well with the Guide Plus feedback. Some of the people feeding back to us, Nath, they weren't parents. They were elder sisters, elder brothers, uncles, grandparents, people who have to take responsibility of children outside of the classic parental mold. And again, like this is an unspoken thing. You've worked in certain schools where that a third of the kids are living with an uncle, and aunt, or a grandma. They're not living with their parent, right? Or they're fostered, or they're this, that, and the other. And there's so many different people who are contributing to the makeup of and the setup of our children and their futures. We have to help these people. Do you know what I mean? That's not even an option. It's like, in some situations, you're 15 and suddenly you've been kicked out, or mom's been taken away, or there's a million backstories. But this isn't an isolated thing. When people hear it, and this is sometimes I think some of the side stories in education, we don't really know. We think about it, the classic, we're in England, the classic white family, 2.4 children, dad has this job, mom has all the stereotype, and then this how school is. But that's not school for a lot of places. And a lot of school for a lot of places, really, they should be judged just on how responsible and caring their adults are, because those kids don't need GCSEs at this point. Those kids need a responsible adult to kind of understand them. And again, being that responsible adult with an educational direction or an educational understanding, that's what we try and help. It's all well and good to make the shiniest new tech. And, we do that with Guide and we work with governments, but then there's the other side. It's like, where are we from? That wasn't my background. We work with top schools and top governments, but that's not our background. We want to be somewhere where we're helping people right down in the core of it, because it's the difference not of life and death, but it's the difference of your future or not. I would say, I would love to do you remember the Pepsi challenge and things like this. Yeah. I would love to do a Guide challenge where we'd be in a situation where we'd say to people, just take it, try it, do it for 10 days, 10 minutes for 30 days and see if it doesn't make a difference with your relationship with your child, because it will, because there's just so much you don't know.
So would you say that there are secrets to parenting then that can be obtained from, books and research that can be applied, and they, that's for everyone. Everyone can apply these methods and they will get results?
1000%. The only thing I would take different from what you said is the idea of secret. This was all common knowledge till we got siloed, mate. It was all common knowledge. They always just say it takes a village to raise a child. And it's only the last 100 years where we've all, or maybe even 30 years, where we've all been boxed off into our little places, and you kind of like, you have neighbors And you're just like, wait, why do we all look after our own children individually? Why aren't we taking it in turns? Or why aren't we coming together where the parents are around and the children are around each other? We're kind of not taught to fear it, but we're not taught to take that step. Obviously, that's more of an English culture thing, maybe, than, say, a Scandinavian or a Japanese culture thing. But, different people work in different ways. And I just think all the information and all the best practice, and Nathan, if you look back on it, so much stuff, you'd be like, oh, cutting edge research. You're like, yeah, that was 1,000 years ago.
Just recycled research.
100%.
Yeah.
And obviously research what is one of the things I love about the EF. For parents, it becomes really interesting to look at the EF. The EF test a lot of these things, so they tell you what works and what doesn't work. And then you kind of realize that a lot of the test research isn't replicable. It's not applicable. So it's like, and you come away with a lot of this. But look, marketing. Yeah, the marketing of it makes a big difference to parents, because that a while ago, you probably remember this, but they were like, yeah, if you play Mozart to a baby, well, it comes out smarter, and it's like, that was something made to sell these Mozart CDs. I believe, I don't want to mention the company in case it's wrong.
I've not heard specifically about Mozart, but I have heard that classical music can improve, child development in babies. And
there was no research for it. It's the same as that one. There's a classic one, the Yale University study, where a teacher took on a class, and she saw their IQs and thought they were really high on the IQ thing, and she was like, yeah, you're going to be great, and this kid did the best class ever. And then the teacher comes and says, wow, how did you get so much out of that bottom class? You're like, bottom class, look at their IQ numbers, they're the most high of this. And they're like, no, they were the locker numbers. And they were like, oh, and that was the best class ever. And it was, no one can find the study. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of this stuff that goes around that is just apocryphal, just not stuff that we have. So how do you go from that and kind of nonsense and say, listen, we're trying to be, warts and all, a base that parents can trust, a base where someone's actually genuinely on your side? Like, we've done well, and obviously it's a commercial product, because without a commercial product, no one respects free products. Let's just be clear. But in that space and place, you just kind of like, you want to have that set of expert friends around you. And why we're going to keep producing these and producing new courses all the time and adding more information for parents to learn. I would hope that within 3 years, you've got a movement around this, just where, we're contributing and we've got a lot of stuff, because essentially all we've done is taken where the parenting stuff is, blended it into where it kind of the start of, teaching, and going all the way through to teaching. Because the other problem we try and solve with our other hat is we're nearly 68 million teachers short, Dave.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not for everyone to have a good teacher. That's just to everyone in the world to have a responsible adult for 1 to 30. 68 million. That's more than the population of the UK. Sure,
absolutely crazy.
And so, here we're 150,000 teachers short. There's places in the country where you can't find a maths teacher for love nor money. So we need people to kind of, and that's a multi-layered problem, which I could go on about for 51 hours, like literally. And obviously, like I've talked a lot today, but I think especially in the first one, it's just really key to say, like, why? Like, why would I trust you guys? Like, fine, you've got some masters, fine, you're a head teacher at a school, fine, you've got 3 kids yourself, fine, But it's just because it's not fair that you don't have access to the information. And if we can be in a situation where we can share it and be proud to share it, do you know what I mean? Like, be proud of teaching your kids. Be proud. Yeah, I don't care if you're on Instagram. I don't care how many followers you've got. I don't care what car you drive. But you take time out to really, try and develop your child so they're a better citizen in the world for you, themselves, and the wider public. Yeah, for my full respect.
Really interesting. So I've got one last question. So I put out a question on our social media platform, and that question was, I said that we're going to have you on the show tonight, and what question would people like to ask you? And the most frequent question was, how do you implement discipline in a constructive way? Obviously, times have changed from when we were children, and, getting a smack bottom and things like this are seen as more inappropriate these days. So what would you, from your experience and what you've read and everything you understand, what would you advise? What would you say is the best way to discipline children in a constructive way?
You see, no one's going to like this, right? But there's a sense of joy and gratitude. We like people to have that, but there should also be a shame of regret and shame, right? You have to have this framework working together. That's like trying to have night without having day, trying to have heat without having cold. It just doesn't work, right? You have to have a balance in all kinds of things. So I'm not saying shame as in I'll make you feel bad, but it's that sense where you leave a space where a child would naturally feel it. So for example, I think I cracked, or the most important part of this for me wasn't in listening to me, because I don't want to be like, listen to me, listen to me. It's like, we have a few very simple rules in our house, right? And then it's all supported by the phrase, we don't do that in our family, or that's what we do in our family. So when we all sit down for grace and everyone's ready to hold hands, hey, that's what we do in our family. When someone's rude or says bad words, it's like, I'd have to be like, don't say that to your brother or sister. But like, we don't do that in our family. And it creates that kind of sense of, hang on, we're together, we're a unit here. And this is what we want. And you can call it discipline, but I think discipline has some negative connotations, because people say children crave discipline. Yeah. I agree with that in terms of actually they want order, right? They want to know what it is. And so when you say something like, I feel, that's not what we do in our family, or, daddy and mummy don't do that. It's kind of like, hang on, I respect these people. These people are decent with me. I'm part of this tribe. Let me be part of this tribe. And my actions will allow me to be part of this tribe. And also that's the first thing on that side. The other thing is to know well what is intended and what is not intended. So you're in the car, right? And your daughter's got a drink and, she spills it all over your fresh carpet. And it's like, and I've seen parents lose their crap over stuff like that. And I would just be like, okay, Amira, what could you have done differently? And she's like, I could have not brought the coffee in the car, Daddy, or the Frappuccino. All right, what else? I could have put a lid on more tightly. Okay, cool. Can we make sure of that for next time? Right. Yeah. And that's a big thing. It's just the structure. You're trying to place the bricks in the road. You're not trying to put handcuffs on every minute. Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, you have to check yourself as well. And my wife does it to me and I do it to my wife, is what tone have you got? Because it's hard for us with work. And this is going to be a big problem, Nick. The background part that comes where people are so used to working from home, they don't find a space to switch off. So they're going to be talking to their kids like they talk to employees. Like, I lived too close to where I worked once, and sometimes I'd come home, I'd still in work mode. And so I made a point to walk 20 minutes to get work out of me, and then come home and be in a situation where I can talk to my child like my child, my wife like my wife, etc., etc. And so that discipline, that structure, order, the kids need to feel safe at home. When they feel safe at home, things generally reduce, because you've got the order and the framework, and they'll ask. And you don't have to be like, no. You say, hey, baby, you know what my answer is. Do we do that? Is that what we do? And so you say it almost kind of like this idea of the family or the unit is the kind of altar, if you want, that we all kind of pay our respects to. And that's what I think I see most fragmented. I see a lot of parents who are letting the tail wag the dog with their kids. I'll be out or I'll be with friends, and I say this, like, I'll never say it to my friends. I'm just there going, oh my God. And then, like, even my kids would be like, did you see it? And I'll be like, yeah, but we don't judge, because you don't know what's going on in the house. And also, we've got all this teaching experience, Nathan.
Yeah. And that's what I was about to get into. Do you think it's taken some time to practice those skills? When you give the example of your daughter spilling a drink in the car, I'd say a majority of people may get really upset about that. A majority of parents or carers, uncles, aunties, whoever, what are you doing? Why you got the drink? And it turns into a storm onto the way to the destination. So is it something you've practiced to stay so calm? Is it because of years of teaching? Is it, what is it?
It's because I never want to be treated like that. And I think that's the main thing. Like, if I make a mistake, I want the person to be like, hey, okay, that was a mistake, but how could you fix it? And I think that's the key thing, is like, I always want to treat people the way I'm treated. And that makes it easy. And if you're not going to do that for your kids, and don't get me wrong, Nathan, sometimes I'm like, this morning, I'm like, Mira, I'm driving her to the bus stop. Oh, we got so much to be grateful for. And couldn't you imagine this, that, and the other? And she's literally just be like, yeah. And she's back in a book. Like, I'm not saying like it's kumbaya or whatever.
Yeah.
Where it matters, I can put it into action. And that's the part. If you never want to be in a situation where you are reacting, you want to be in a situation where you're responding. And this is another rule, it's just kind of the lightest part of stoicism in that sense, is in terms of, not reacting, but responding. And also all these things, you can, I don't forget how much power you have. And I'll tell you this, like, I had a great relationship with my parents, whatnot, growing up, but especially my father, like, my whole life is based on not being my parents, right? So I'm a supportive, loving, that I'm just not, that's it. It's like rule number one. And so my daughter's wearing this, what they call them, onesies or OV.
Yeah, onesie.
It's she's wearing this avocado, right? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And so I'm like, so that's the fashion now, is it? being an avocado, sarcastic. And then she just looked at me, she went, well, then I guess I'll never wear it again. I'm like, whoa, why'd you get like that? Why'd you get like that? And then I was just like, remember, why? I was joking with you. Why'd you get what you said? She said, Daddy, your opinion's really important to me. And I was just like, oh my God, I really didn't click that my opinion would matter so much to my daughter, because from my own parents, their opinion did not matter. Like, it was not relevant.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my God, the smallest thing means the world to them. So then when I go back and I think, well, if I shout at you, or if I'm harsh on you, that's 10 times more than anyone else doing it. Do you know what I mean? And so it's kind of like, when you kind of hold, actually, as a parent, you've got so much opportunity to influence, then you've really got to be careful with that tool you're wielding. It becomes a big thing. But to answer the question overall, you don't try and have more than 3 to 5 things that are the general frameworks, right? So we don't have to worry about screen time because there's no screens. On the weekend, it's 2 hours, 2 hours, and a family movie. There may be on the holidays, again, it's the same, 2 hours, etc., etc. But then it's always, you get 2 hours, you go and give 2 hours, whether you're giving it to sport or this, that, and the other. So they're not massive rules, right? We always have dinner together, and we will always read together. That's pretty much it. Oh, and you never rude to your mum. That's you can be rude to me. Do you know what I mean? Because so they need to vent sometimes as well. So if you're angry or upset, come and tell me. But don't do it too much. Do you see? But that's probably all the rules we have. But everything falls into it. Does that make sense, Nate?
Yeah, that's really, really interesting.
And so what I would say when you're picking those rules or those guidelines, whatever you want to call it, try and think about it like someone gave me a piece of advice on this once. He's like, don't try and be like, I'm going to do this. He's like, imagine like a coat stand with 3 or 4 hooks for coats, right? 3 or 4. And then you basically hanging everything on those principles, right? Yeah. So for us, the principle is mum's number 1, mum's number 2, mum's number 3. Standard. Mum is the one. Number 2, we don't do screens. Number 3, we're polite unless someone is rude to us. And we read together, we eat together. Do you know what I mean? Like, even like, you know, that,
it keeps it simple as well, doesn't it? It doesn't blur the lines. It's just keeps it so simple.
Star charts, Nathan, be like, you did this, that's half a star. You did that, it's 3/4 of a star. I'm just like, that's exhausting, man. And you're teaching your kid reward. Everything's a reward. Reward. I'm not like, because the reward should be, you got to do it. Do you know what I mean?
So would you say then, would you agree then it's been beneficial to kind of make a mantra, like a family mantra that you guys follow and believe in, and, you know,
without a shadow of a doubt, like, I'll be honest with you, there's something like, you know, when you go to other people's house and they text, so we're grateful that we have a lot of people over. So when we break bread, we sit down, I'll always do a grace. And I say, look, it's a non-religious grace. We just say something we're grateful for. And, you know, so we do that often, like with anyone who's around, that's stand. You have to do that if you come to my house and you sit. If you're with my family anyway. And when we do that, and the amount of people afterwards just be like, you know what, we do that now. And it's just so calming. Or it's just so thick. Is that? And obviously I'm saying there's recency effect, you feel it at the beginning, this and the other, but it just has to be a few touch points with your family, just where it's just like, that's yours.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And too many people, if you give your life over to Mark Zuckerberg and Google and Fortnite and all those things, it's like, look, you can, but they're going to be the ones that have an influence. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Just think about it. If you let a child have 4 or 5 hours of screens a day and the rest of the time is school and you're just putting them to bed, where is your influence on your child? Like,
yeah.
where are you expected to have influenced them? And then they're just like, well, they don't listen. They'd be like, well, it's not that they don't listen. They will listen to their favorite YouTuber, but you've let that influence be the most pertinent influence. And I just think you have to think about that, because they're quiet to you, right? They're on that screen, they're quiet to you, but they're being influenced. Like, the youngest one, he named any Pokemon in the world, right? And what it evolves into, and this, that, and the other. And I was just like, I got to curb your Pokemon time, right? And his 4 hours he'll spend on Pokemon, like standard. Like if I left him for 8 hours, he would. And that's an influence on it. That's an influence in kind of some of the phrases he says, right? That's an influence on who he looks up to, like, you know, how he'll be Pikachu in this scenario. And you say, that's just playing, that's kid. Of course it is. But ultimately, if I leave that untapped where he can kind of be a world away from me, do you see what I mean? So he has 8 hours of that week if he chooses. But, you know, if it was every single afternoon and every weekend for a year, what are you expecting to happen now, especially when you're watching YouTubers and gamers and this? And there are a lot of alternative lifestyles that you can make good money being a gamer and competing, this, that, and the other. or, you know, doing reaction videos and the rest of the other. Why? Why do they believe that? Because that's what they're watching. You know, TikTok videos the whole time, dance routines. You've never seen like the people with career options.
So interesting as well, because working at the secondary schools, I've never heard so many students say, "Oh, I'm going to be a YouTuber," or "I'm going to be a gamer that, you know, analyzes games," or "Do you know there's e-sport competitions, sir? And I'm going to be a part of that." And it's obviously, I'm from a different world. When I was 16, we didn't have esports competitions and YouTubers. It was, gaming time was seen as a waste of time. It wasn't seen as something that, you know, you're working towards this bigger goal and it's a big career. So it's, yeah, it's really interesting to see how kids are developing and changing as time goes on. And obviously screens are a huge influence, and in some homes, yeah, bigger influence than the parents. And I get that's what you're saying from that. And that's, it's really, really interesting. I have noticed the time, and we've got a few minutes left, Leon, but what I was really interested in as well, earlier on in the webinar, you're speaking about some of the parent feedback that you got for the course. And maybe if you've got time, obviously, or if you could just share one or two comments.
I'd love to, because obviously parents, it's really important for them to do it. If you give me sharing permissions, I would love to share the element here, just as a snapshot. Obviously, look, a lot of people might be listening and tuning into what we're saying, and they'd just be like, well, you know, easy for you. I haven't got time in the evening, and I understand that, you know what I mean? But obviously the same thing that, you know, where you choose to make choices in life that can maybe make more time with your children. I'm not saying that the first thing, a video course could be the solution to the problem. You might be in a situation where you need to find a role that makes more time for you, your children. You know, that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, like, you know, my mum was a single mum. She worked 2 jobs. You know, it would have been very hard for her to look at where it is, but she still had the weekends to kind of absorb information, do this, that, and the other. I'm never a believer in the phrase "life's too short." I've never believed that. I am a believer in the phrase "life feels short if you don't feel it." Do you know what I mean? Like it can feel very short, and I haven't fallen prey to that. But you know, I'm happy to pick up any of these discussions on LinkedIn. Is the only social media that I have, or if anything comes through to you, Nathan, please send it through. But to share and show some of the feedback in these elements here. It was just really nice. Like, you know, I could pick a load of these, but I see now I have to take time to check that my children can answer questions, check their understanding of a task before letting them go on with it. It's just kind of like basic. How do you actually
questioning?
How do you just kind of like, it's like, oh, I just set them the question. Well, actually, I got to give them time to answer. It's things that we would know inherently as teachers. Sharing the input session for each activity works well. I've learned I need to be more patient working through the tasks that my children find more challenging. We both learn at the same time, and we're having quality time together. And that's the thing, you know, there's a video all about learning, like that thing I mentioned to you that I learned. We did a video on it then. And so we pushed all those, this thing here. I didn't think this was important, but it's been a useful reminder to provide praise, and not just on the academic success. My son is responding so much better now. Right? It's not because that was like a dun dun dun, you've got a certificate now to speak to your child, but it was just kind of, it's a video on praise and how you got to praise the other things at times, you know, and use praise wisely. And then you've got this kind of response. And obviously, you know, the it's on the Guide Plus, it's on the homepage, it's on the feedback page, you see that. But this one I really like as well. I love helping my children learn from home and getting an insight into different teaching methods using different year groups. I'm fortunate I have time to dedicate to home learning, and I found my children to be very accepting and enthusiastic on it. And that's a lifestyle choice there in terms of, you know, post-pandemic and how it's going. But it's just lots of people about how they can feedback and develop and this, that, and the other. Here's a lovely one. My son does not enjoy, and he's not the best at writing, but it's been lovely to see him choosing to write more frequently, even if it's a little difficult to read. I wouldn't have been able to do this without what I learned on the videos.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful, because that's
small. It's small. I promise you, it's just small. Like, there's 1,000 videos, right? But we don't say like, hey, do all of it, this and the other. But just imagine if you just got a few tips to help them communicate a little bit better, read a little bit better, spend time with you a little better, be calm with you, concentrate a little better. We're not looking to dun, 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 dun. It's a brand new child. Right? That's not how it works. How it does work is you get into a situation where you're kind of like, hey, it's just little wins, because you're going to have your child as a child for probably 15 years, right? And then a lot of what you put in by then is going to be the payoff. So critically, between like 5 to 11 and then, or 11 to 13, depending where you are, you can make a hell of a lot of difference. Imagine if you're just putting in, you're absorbing 5-10 minutes a day, right? That's an hour-ish a week, right? How much more advice would you be able to say and give to your child? And that's why we're coming really strong with it. Every week we're going to be doing these speaks. You're going to be speaking to different people. You're going to have all these different, I don't know why these pair of shoes are in the shot. I apologize. The extra videos that you're going to be getting, summaries of books, and really we just want to be that hub, like I said before, like your expert friends when it comes to working with your child. And look, Nathan, and we don't take that lightly. Do you know what I mean? All we can do is help you with little bits. We're not saying we're fixing the problem for you. All of those things are with you, and it's the small regular increments that make the biggest difference.
Wow, fantastic. Well, I am conscious of time. We have run up to the end, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Leon.
Like 4 more hours. Nate, let me tell you what I think about.
I mean, we can schedule 4 hours over the next 4 months. If I mean, obviously, it'd be a pleasure to have you back on, and we look forward to having you back on. Talk about other aspects of life, whether that's school life.
Making money. We're talking about making money. I've been talking about
being a head teacher, being a head teacher of an outstanding school, working in the schools in London that you worked in, a very interesting, diverse background and experience. So I am super excited to have you back on to discuss some of those points. It's been an absolute pleasure today having you on, Leon. And I look forward to seeing you next time. And this video has been recorded and it will be available on the Guide Plus platform for anyone that missed it, came in halfway through and is interested in recapping some of the amazing insights that Leon's been sharing with us today. Absolute pleasure, Leon. Do you have anything to say before we go?
Honestly, I was on the Jeremy Kyle show just before this, Nathan, and I enjoy them both just as much because that guy had a lot of energy and you've got a lot of energy too. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for agreeing to take on these shows, and I hope you're enjoying it as much as we're, and being part of the mission as much as we're enjoying trying to get the mission out there.
Absolutely loving it. Pleasure, Leon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.